What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Igniting Hope Radio. I am one of your hosts, Sherman Webb-Middlebrooks, lifelong Buffalo resident and full-time Black man. And our podcast is sponsored by the Buffalo Center for Health Equity, where we're here having conversations that ignite hope with folks in the community that are actually doing the work. And so we have another great episode for y'all today. It's really just a reunion of me and my friends on this platform. So today I have the illustrious, wonderful Dr. Renee Cadzow. She's an anthropologist, a researcher, advocate for community health, a mom, and just an overall fierce woman in the community. Don't let the smile and don't let the calm demeanor fool you. Renee, no joke out here, y'all. So thank you for joining us, Renee. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing really good, Sherman. Thanks for such a great introduction.
Of course, we go back. So yeah, just talk to us a little bit about how you've been and how you've got into this work. You're over at UB now. You used to be at Duville, but talk to us a little bit about your journey as an anthropologist. Wait, I say that right though, right?
Yep, you got it.
Anthropologist, evaluator, and a researcher. How did you find yourself getting into this work? Let the people know.
Yeah. So it goes back to when I first started graduate school, and I was really interested in medical anthropology, biological anthropology, and understanding how our environment and our biology kind of work together to create our health, and how some of us have exposure to environment that promotes good health. Some of us are exposed to environment that doesn't promote good health, and that sometimes can hurt us or cause us to kind of have trade-offs, where we make one biological choice right now, which isn't really a choice, it's your body making that choice in order to preserve your health in the short term, but in the long term, it ends up affecting your health negatively. So I started getting into that, and then I worked as a graduate student. I worked in the Department of Family Medicine at UB, where I really was immersed in doing health disparities research, which is really looking at those different experiences that different communities have in outcomes like cancer or asthma or um, you know, any kind of heart disease, or even just access to healthcare in general. And so, after finishing my degree, I was there with family medicine, working with them for about 4 years, doing evaluation research on various topics of healthcare access and health outcome differences. You mentioned I was at Duville, so I jumped from UB in the Department of Family Medicine over to Duville doing health services administration, teaching and research for about 12 years there. And throughout that time, I had maintained connection with UB and worked with them in the Clinical and Translational Science Institute, the CTSI. So that was kind of wearing both hats there for a while. And my, love of research just kind of continued to blossom, expand, and I felt this kind of call to come back to UB in a full-time capacity, working in the School of Public Health and Health Professions. So that's the long story short.
No, that was cool. You covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. I got to give you credit on that one. That's I guess that's a credit to your facilitation skills, which kind of loops me sort of into like how we met and how we crossed paths. So when you were still over at Duville, you were doing work with the Community Health Worker Network of Buffalo. Now I'm kind of morphed into Connect, even though Community Health Worker Network of Buffalo is still around. So that's how we met. You were doing a lot of research, and then bringing your kids out to different events. You and Jess and Rawa and the whole crew, and then you started talking about this concept that every time I think about it, I always credit you in this community-based participatory research. And as a researcher, um, I really began to just value your role on the team because I think research seemed like this super lofty, critically focused thing where like only people behind computers and in books are like doing it, and it has to be super technical, and you can't make any mistakes, and like it has to happen in a lab and all these other things that, like, when you're not in it, you grow up thinking. And I had a degree in psychology, so I had some basic knowledge and understanding of research, but also having that degree in psychology, I'm from like a let's what's the study kind of a standpoint. So working with you, just having the privilege to learn that, like, no, research, it is that, but it's also like living surveys. If you got 30 people in the room, that's a relative sample of the population. You can start asking questions and drawing percentages, and you can simplify it and make it more practical and useful if you're not about to write an academic paper. um and so just really that was like one of the things where I was like, yo, she is dope, because now I can take some of stuff that like may seem philosophical, and I could communicate it to people in a way where they can understand it. So yeah, just talk to us a little bit about how you got involved as a community advocate, and using your skills in academia and research to really give voice and help paint the picture of the disparities that's happening in the community.
Yeah, I guess that goes back about 13 years or so when I first became involved with the Community Health Worker Network, and it was really through like a 2-day what they call a stakeholders training. So folks who are kind of peripherally involved in the work of community health workers, but not community health workers themselves. So what we now call community health worker allies.
Gotcha.
Um, and I just was so compelled by the experience within that training. It was humbling. It was a reminder. It was engaging, and it helped me to connect then with kind of where my heart was in doing health disparities research, and that's working directly with people who know firsthand
Hmm.
what those factors are, what the things that affect whether you can access healthcare, whether you have a healthy and safe home to live in, whether you have access to food. Community health workers are on the front lines doing that work, and so working directly with them on research related to that just made sense. So in that process of getting to know that work and being an ally, I also, as you said, started facilitating trainings, which let me meet so many people and hear so many stories. And while I do quantitative research, which means collecting that hard, uh, discrete data, right? Like
Yeah.
I also do qualitative, which is the story. It's the context. That's really the anthropologist in me. It wants to know what's really going on the ground. Doing
Hmm.
that like ethnography, that observation, and writing down the stories, and being in spaces with community members and community health workers really fostered my love of community, but also contributed to my understanding of root causes of the issues that we see in our community and
Yeah.
possible solutions that we should be trying, to address those issues.
Yeah, I think like that's super dope, just because just working with you and just with all of just everybody else would connect, and the community health workers, just thinking like, okay, everybody does have a role to play. And so like when you can recognize like your teammates strengths, like you really um are able to kind of recognize your own, and then you're able to lean into like, okay, so I'm really good at this and I'll lean into this, but like this other person is really good at that, so how can like we lean into that and become like a super dynamic team. So I think that for me was like I want to say like was like the greatest treat of just meeting you and working with you, especially facilitating with you. When we would go out doing those in-service trainings on like cultural competency and the different community health worker competencies, just how like dynamic we are as a training duo, and just the benefit that I know the audience is getting of like you have me and Renee show up, like it's gonna be a good training, and like you gonna get a wide perspective of experiences and information. So yeah, just talk a little bit about like coming from behind research and then like really facilitating it and advocating. So what has that experience been like for you? Because a lot of folks who do research don't usually like come to the forefront. So what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, sometimes researchers can kind of get stuck in their heads a little bit, right? We like to quote unquote nerd out over particular topics, right? And sometimes we talk in the same way that we write in our academic papers, so it can be hard to relate to a researcher, right? So co-facilitating with you and others, like helping to break down ways to explain things in more accessible ways to everyone, even other researchers, it's useful to use plain language, right? To talk with others about what you do, what you're interested in, what you understand to be the mechanisms behind a health condition, right? Like understanding the research, but then being able to translate it into accessible sound bites was really a skill that I was able to build with folks like you and working in spaces, where we're trying to transmit information in quick and accessible and compelling ways. And
Yeah.
then also seeing how to tie it to the stories, right? Like to make those direct connections to the stories so that it really drives the point home. You can't just share statistics with people. You got to have a story that goes with the statistics.
Right, right. And I think like that is that's where we can't miss. Like what I because you're gonna get the stories and you're gonna get the stats. So like if you want one, you're gonna get that. If you want the other, you're gonna get that. If you are both and kind of a person, we got that for you too. So like
Yeah.
just the pride of feeling like I'm part of like the Justice League or something like that. Of like we just all come together with our talents and we just doing dope stuff. And so yeah, just I love working with you. So another opportunity that we have to work together going forward is being together on the CTSI board. So this is like I'm new to the board. This is like an exciting opportunity for me just because as an individual who used to look at research like this far off thing, and now that I'm a bit more familiar, more comfortable with it, and I have some researcher friends. I talk with my man Dr. Chris Saintville and my man Dr. Skylar Lawson. So I got some research buddies, and of course you. So I can kind of I can keep up a little bit
Mhm.
with my with my research friends. So, but also just understanding that like it's important for everybody to have a seat at the table. And the fact that like this table has been created by UB. Um, and that the opportunity was extended for me to be a part of it. I think it's just been a great opportunity. And so why do you think it's important for folks like us to come together on the CTSI board to really give voice to folks in community?
Yeah, well, the CTSI really seeks to, and my role with them is the core co-director of the Recruitment and Special Populations Core, and the aim is to increase representation of everyone in the research process because we know that clinical decisions, medicines,
Hmm.
treatments, behavioral health strategies are all being informed by the research, and if we don't have representation from everybody in the research, then the treatments, the medicines, the strategies are not going to meet the needs of everybody because they're not represented in developing those strategies. They're not partners in the development of those strategies. So things like the CTSI advisory board is intended to bring folks to the table to help figure out how we can make sure that when we do recruitment and outreach, when we're conducting community engagement initiatives, that we're doing it in a way that's going to maximize our chance of pulling folks to the table, of getting everybody involved in partnering, and not alienating people or perpetuating distrust of research among our community.
Yeah, and I think like that's cool because sometimes like yeah, there's like the traditional you would expect like distrust sometimes with like research and stuff like that, but also sometimes it's just like folks just don't know like opportunities that are available to them to even be involved in research. And I think it also will just increase the effectiveness of policy when we're talking about medical and science research, increase just the overall effectiveness of those developments because it's not just research being done on smaller populations or a specific population of people who know that research is even happening.
Yeah.
So Yeah. So I know we've been using acronyms, and I just want to, if folks are just tuning in and don't know exactly what the CTSI board is, it's the University at Buffalo's Clinical and Translational Science Institute. It's a that is some heavy jargon, but essentially, I am part of the community advisory board for that, and we're just the community voice, folks who they bring in to kind of run things by, and go over plans, and just to make sure that like folks have a seat at the table with lived experience and people who are actually on the ground. So it's really meeting people where they're at in the community. And so I'm super excited to learn more about how I can bring marginalized voices and from out of the margins and onto the paper.
Mhm.
Yeah. So in keeping with that, you have been working on an exciting project. So like most often when people like yourself become a doctor and have the PhD, they write books. They don't often, you know, they write books. They don't often write children's books. So talk to me a little bit about this book that you've worked on and have created to help children and families better understand research. Like what inspired this, and why is it important to make research accessible and not intimidating for our youngest members of the community?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so with recruitment and special populations, so the National Institute of Health, the NIH, defines special populations as children, older adults, people with complex chronic diseases, people who
Okay.
had childhood diseases who are now adults. So it's like this group of folks who are historically underrepresented in research. And when we started looking at I work in partnership with Dr. Teresa Quatrin, who's a pediatric endocrinologist, and we've worked together over the years on various initiatives related to childhood obesity or breastfeeding. And so when we came together on this in the CTSI work, we both were like, well, how do we reach children? You know, and so we started to look at the available resources to increase the participation of children in research. And most of the resources that were around, this is around 2016, 2017, most were related to specific pharmaceutical industry. So
Okay.
if a pharmaceutical industry were testing a drug, they might have some specific educational materials related to that drug. But there wasn't really a presence of just general educational materials to help children and their families understand research more broadly. Research could be, a behavioral treatment for something. It could be just collecting, observational data about children and how they interact in, let's say, a healthcare setting, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't always have to be a clinical trial or a drug test. And we wanted to kind of expand the understanding of children and their families about the broadness of research. And because we couldn't find any tools out there, we said, well, let's develop one ourselves. And as you mentioned earlier, I'm a mom. I've got 4 kids. At that time, they ranged in age from about like 5 to 12. So they were kind of in this target age group that we were going to
Perfect.
develop this book for. So I was like, well, my kids like, crack the code. They like word search. They like connect the dot. I started thinking about the types of activities that would really engage them. And then we started wrapping a story of a child. Her name is Sofia, going through this this process of learning about a research study that could help her asthma, and then ultimately deciding to enroll in it. But all of the thoughts that go through her head, and the questions that she has, the questions her parents have, what that looks like in our imagination, and then we got feedback from kids about it as we developed the book.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
so what's the name of the book again?
It's called Sophia Learns About Research.
Sophia Learns About Research. Okay. So folks, make sure that you get on your Googles. Is it on Amazon? Is it on Google? Where can they find it?
It's actually on the UB's CTSI webpage, but if you just Google Sofia Learns About Research, it'll take you to that site. So if you want to
There you
type
go.
in UB with it as well, then you'll sure to find it.
So, y'all heard it here. Go into your search bar, type in Sofia Learns About Research, right?
Yep, and it's Sophia with an F.
Okay, boom. That's important. Sophia with an F. So Sophia with an F learns about research. Type that into your search bar, and check that out because I think even for adults, it might be something that's palatable to get some adults over like the fear of doing research because you could put it into like a children forum. So like I know as an adult and a parent having sometimes the books be for kids, but it really be lessons for adults in there too.
Oh yeah.
So if you're an adult out there who's a little bit nervous about research, make sure you go ahead and check that out too. So I guess my follow-up question to that would be just as somebody like yourself who like I've worked with and come to like know and really respect, how do you think acknowledging past harms like unethical studies or even the one that the classic Tuskegee study that folks refer back to, how do you think that shapes how you approach research and how you think the community views research?
Yeah. I think I think researchers, if they're planning to work in community, they need to acknowledge up front that distrust exists and that they understand where that distrust comes from and it's justified. Like, I think we need to just stop and listen and learn from our community partners, from our colleagues in community about what their concerns are, and then we can share information about the policies, about the laws that have been passed because of those atrocities that protect people that participate in research, and all of the protections that exist throughout participation in a research study, including you're not compelled to stay in it. Can leave at any time. If
Oh,
there's something that happens that you're harmed in some way, it's reported. A study will be stopped if somebody is harmed in some way. So there's a lot of different mechanisms that are put in place to ensure that things like that don't happen again.
okay,
Um, but just because those are in place, it doesn't mean the trust is automatically restored. It's
right,
going to take decades for trust to be restored there because of the unethical and harmful and violent things that have happened in our past. So we need to start first by acknowledging it, having humility when we approach community, and I think probably first and foremost, we need to ensure that whatever it is that we're interested in researching matches with community's priorities. So
mm,
if we're coming in and we want to do a research study, but it has no relevance or interest to our community partner, that's not going to really help with overcoming distrust.
right,
It's really going to say, yeah, it's still an us and them sort of thing. But we want to undo that us and them. We want to say we're really working together for a better community, a healthier community, but what does that look like to others in our community, and how do we set our research priorities to match that, rather than coming in with ideas that we've just come up with in our offices in front of our computers, or reading our textbooks, right? Like, we want to make sure it's responsive, and I think that's going to help to overcome harm and build trust if we're working together on things that are of common value, of common interest.
I love that answer. Because sometimes I think folks either feel like we're living in the purge where like it's all crazy and it's anarchy and it's nonsense, or folks think like we're living in Disneyland and like everything's supposed to always like work out like immediately in like a nice 22 or 48 minute, like it's supposed to just work out for us. And like no, what you're talking about really shows like how like real history is and how history impacts the present and how you have to like genuinely acknowledge these things that like m- most of the time, not even a lot of the time, most of the time, like we as individuals living now weren't part of. Like we weren't present and conducting research and doing that, but like we what they say, the game don't change, only the players do. And so like now we're the new players on the board in the same game, and it's kind of hard to not reference the past and be like, are you going to play the game the same way the previous players did? And so when you're coming in with like a new set of rules and a new way of doing things, it definitely takes a while for things to catch on. And I think that's where individuals like you who are championing this mindset um our critical ingredient for that shift to occur, because folks do get burnt out, folks do get frustrated, but it's because I don't think that they have necessarily the direct connection or direct experiences or shared experience even in community that a researcher such as yourself has, because you do come from behind the screen and from behind the books, and you are out in the community doing different things, so you get to have that perspective of like, yeah, I'm a researcher, but like I'm also out here too. And so I think we need more folks like you that are doing that both and kind of a thing. So definitely kudos to you. And also, if you're a young person who happens to be watching this interview and you feel inspired and you would like to um, be a community activist and organizer and researcher like a Dr. Renee Cadzow and a community health worker, make sure you join us September 20th at the Igniting Hope Conference. That's going to be taking place at the Jacobs School of Medicine, where we're going to be putting together a community plan of action. We're not just meeting just to be meeting, so don't come there just looking to be talked at. Please come willing to engage and share your thoughts, opinions, and ideas. So and speaking of that, so like what would you say kind of ignites and gives you hope to continue doing the work that you're doing as a community member, as a mom, as an anthropologist, as a researcher? What inspires and gives you hope, Renee?
Oh, that's such a good question, because sometimes the world doesn't inspire or give us hope.
Word.
But I think we yeah, I mean, I think, you mentioned getting into community, going, I guess, as a colleague of ours, Dr. St. Ville said, go outside, right? Like
Yeah.
when you go into spaces and like really immerse yourself, it's just so rewarding to be a part of something bigger than yourself. When you feel that sort of camaraderie and connection with others. When we do a community health worker training and we spend 4 days, 28 hours with a new
Plus.
group of people. Yeah, yeah. And it's like, and you learn you're delivering the same content that you've delivered, 10 times before, but it's different every time because you're getting different stories. And I think it's like, you're growing as a human, like you're expanding your understanding of what it is to be human through those different connections. And that's just always rewarding, like it life would be pretty boring if, I if we didn't go outside, if we didn't connect with people with, different backgrounds and experiences from us, and to hear those and to really, kind of file them away in my brain, and then it just helps me to see things differently with each new experience I have, because now I'm interpreting that new experience with all of this new information and the lived experiences of other people I've interacted with, right? So it helps me ask better questions, it helps me make better decisions, it helps me raise my children, more responsibly, right? Like it's those community connections are, like, I guess, the most fortifying, I'd say.
That was a tremendous answer. Like, like for real. I mean, that was definitely a PhD level answer. Yeah, because like everything you said, I know, I feel, and I agree with. I just don't think I would have been able to articulate it in that way. So yeah, absolutely. You have to go outside. You have to get outside of your own echo chamber, your own experience, and have those vicarious traumas, have those vicarious celebrations, have those vicarious just experiences through other people, to know that like your lived experience isn't the only lived experience taking place right now, and it's just as valid as somebody else's lived experience. And I think the one of the key things for me I've learned is like a lot of times we want our experience to just be like, but this is happening to me and this is what I'm going through. And like, that's very true and real, but like, it's no more true or no more real than what the person next to you is experiencing. And like, and if you want space to be held and your experience to be valued and recognized, then like, even if the person next to you is like, having something that's oppositional to you potentially, you kind of got to have space to like respect and hear where they coming from if you want your side to be respected as well. So I think that has been one of the greatest gifts, just from, like you said, going outside and meeting different people and having those vicarious experiences through others and hearing their stories. Absolutely. um
Mhm. And and y'all, I'm an introvert, so so if I can do it, yeah,
good
everybody
point.
else can't too.
Good point. That's a good point. That's a good point because because I think like I think I'm somebody described me as probably the most extroverted introvert they know, and I was like, yeah, I'll take that because like my default is to just go off, be by myself, but I'm incredibly comfortable in large spaces of people. I just will not initiate anything, but I will have no problem speaking when spoken to.
Mhm.
But I probably won't be in there just initiating and working the room, even though like I have no problem. I mean, you know me, I have no problem talking to people and being engaging. Um, but yeah, I would much rather just kind of sit back and people watch and reflect and process and kind of have my own thing. Um, but yeah, it kind of gets you out your comfort zone a little bit. I'm good if all the attention is on me and we presenting. But to like go somewhere and like I'm just okay, a fly on the wall and I'm observing and I'm just a listener, like that is where the anxiety for me comes in. But that's also like where the greatest moments of growth and reflection and learning come in because I'm not running off at the mouth. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about me and my experience. I'm just soaking in and listening to other people's experiences. Um, and some of it is like, oh, I've been through that too. Wow, I ain't the only one. And other things is like, oh, wow, that's happening. Wow, my world
Mhm.
is small. I ain't even know stuff like that was going on. So, like, I think that's again just the beauty of being outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
So also if you're headed outside, and you're looking for a place to go that's outside of your house, one of the places where you can go, where you can do things like explore and do more is that explore more. Right? So we have
Yeah.
Explore More is an interactive game that you have down there at our Museum of Play down there by Canal Side, at our Explore More here in Buffalo, New York. So, talk to us a little bit about how your interactive game helps kids and their parents learn about research in a fun and engaging way. Because I think that's a very innovative approach too, as well. So we got books and we got
Yeah.
games.
Yeah, so we had some internal funding from the CTSI, the Clinical and Translational Science Institute, to work with a game producing company. Workin' Man was the name of them, and we worked with them to create this gamified version where the first screen is you get to make an avatar of Sophia. So Sophia can look like however you want her to look. So you first create your avatar, and then she goes through kind of an helps to identify and do away with triggers to her asthma. So it could be like smoke from an automotive, like from a car, or it could be somebody smoking on a park bench, or it could be plants, right? So like all of the different things that might trigger her asthma, and you're looking for strategies to help her, like either avoid those triggers or treat them with a medicine of some sort. So it's a much simplified version of the story, and it lends itself well to kind of like an interactive game for kids anywhere from like 4 to 12 or 13. And we think the avatar is probably the most fun part about it. They get to create like a little research ranger, right? That maybe looks like them or looks like
Ooh,
somebody that they know, and
a
um,
research ranger. I
yeah,
like that
yeah,
term.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah. I
but
think
yeah, so it's right. It's on the third floor of Explore and More, and it's in their Oh, it's in there. They have kind of a learning, caring, and healing. So it's where they have
Ah.
like kind of a play area for like as if you were in the hospital or you're in a lab. And it's right there on the third floor.
Oh, okay. I know over by that area. Yeah, we have to we have to take the kids back over there, and they might have but I think Mama might have. I know I took usually when I go to explore more, I'm taking my kids and all the nieces and nephews, and then I find another parent and we talk. But now you got me wanting to go over there to explore more on the third floor and learning about how was it Sophia was it learns about
About
research.
research.
So okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Sophia with an F learns about research. So we got the book and we also got the interactive game on the third floor of Explore More, which I think is awesome because I was a kid with childhood asthma. Um and I was also a child of the 90s. So I don't know if maybe my parents or family really understood asthma, the causes, the triggers. All I knew was I take my albuterol inhaler like in the case of emergency, and I take like my nebulizer machine at night and in the morning. But like to know that like my bedroom window was right by like a big parking lot and a factory in the projects. Maybe that was contributing to know that like all the adults in my house like smoked cigarettes. Like nobody would have maybe they did know and just didn't care because the 90s was a different time. And they were going through whatever they were going through personally and individually. But like for me as a kid to not know like those things, like I probably would have been able to maybe protect myself a little bit more. So I think even just equipping and arming young people with that knowledge, because if I'd have known that like the cigarette smoke was impacting my asthma as a kid, maybe I wouldn't have hung out or in the living room or in the kitchen where they were doing so much. Maybe I would have spent more time outside or just did what I could do to avoid it. But just not knowing, I probably subjected myself to more secondhand smoke or other things that aggravated my asthma just as a default of my environment. So I think stuff like this game is super important, just to provide information, like you said, in a way where everybody can get it, and it's gamified. So like you learn it on accident. You know, they say
Yep.
you learn it on accident. So that's cool. That's cool. So something else that I know that you've shared also like in our email correspondence with a little bit of time that we have left is that your own personal experience with your family participating in a research study. So can you talk to us? Would you be willing to talk to us a little bit about like your own personal family experience participating in research?
Yeah, yeah. So, with you can't be all talk and no action, right? So
Yeah,
when
Renee.
the the opportunity arose for participation in a Lyme disease vaccine study, and we have we spend a lot of time out in the country. We love to go camping. We've been exposed to Lyme disease comes from tick bites, if especially if a tick has
Oh,
bitten you and stays on you for a long period of time,
okay.
you can be transmitting Lyme disease. So we have tons of ticks in the country and actually here even in the city if you go up into Grand Island there's ticks if you're in the wooded areas there. So
Didn't know
they
that.
seem to, yeah, they're in the same areas that you have a lot of deer particularly.
Okay.
Um, so this opportunity arose to participate in a Lyme disease vaccine study, and they were looking for children and adults to participate. And so we posed it to our kids. We said, and this is my husband and I, we said, you know, what's involved in this is that they give you a test vaccine or you get a placebo, which
Hmm.
is basically nothing. It's just, but they want to make sure that it's not just the getting of the treatment that causes any kind of response to it. So they give you either the actual vaccine that's being tested or nothing in a shot. That's the same as getting a vaccine shot. And then they would take your blood every couple of months to look at the antibodies that are formed in your blood as a response to the vaccine. So we asked our kids, do you want to do this? It's going to involve getting some shots. The drug has been deemed, safe in humans. This is a phase 2. So they're really just looking at how much they need to give and how long it lasts, and if there's any other side effects than, different from what they've found in the phase 1. And all of our kids were like, yeah, this seems like a good idea. I mean, we want there to be a vaccine for Lyme disease
That's
because,
what's up.
yeah, they were like, it stinks to go into the woods and then worry about if you get a tick and, if that tick's going to give you Lyme disease. So if there was some sort of vaccine to prevent that disease from happening, we'd love that to happen. So they agreed to enroll. Now, 2 of them stayed in for the first phase of the study and didn't want to continue. There was a booster phase that 2 of my children did continue on, and I did too. The reason they dropped out of it is they really did not like having their blood drawn. They
Ah,
powered through in the first phase, but it just was it was for them, it was traumatic for a little while, for having their
gotcha.
blood drawn. But everybody's got their thing, right?
Right,
And
right.
they powered through. But it was exciting to see that that trial was an effective trial. They found out that it appears that the vaccine is effective, and it may be going to market to be released. It has to go through another couple of processes with phase 3 and then to be approved by the Federal Drug Administration. But to kind of be part of something that may be released into the market,
Yeah.
was really kind of rewarding, right? Like because we're part of the information that they were able to collect to determine if it was effective. So
I mean, like that's cool. Like hearing the story like that. Like, I mean, I'm an adult, but even as a young person, I probably would think like something like that would be cool just to be a part of it. Especially because I know your young people are probably going to be a little more educated on the importance of what they're doing, and I think like that's great when like parents can like bring what they do home in like a positive way because sometimes folks
yeah,
bring work home and it's stressful and you're yelling at the dog, you're yelling at the kids, you're yelling at everybody because you brought work home and now you stressed. But like, what about the good aspects, the positive aspects, the opportunities that come with bringing work home? So I think this is a positive example of bringing your work home and involving your family in that. And I think again that just goes back to saying what you were saying earlier. Like you ain't just talking, you walking. So I think like that's really dope to lift up too. And the fact that like it wasn't just a perfect fairy tale story for you and your family. Like some of your kids, it was like, okay, we're gonna try it, then we not. And I think that goes to again reiterate the rights that participants have and the power that participants have to say no, and that you're not forced to do it, but also the juxtaposition to like, no, we're gonna continue doing it, and even yourself participating. So I think that just goes to show like a super realistic example of how things can and might play out. It's not a Disneyland fairy tale where the whole family does it and everybody's happy and nobody's traumatized by getting their blood drawn. And like nobody lives in that world. So like
yeah.
so I'm glad that you were able and willing to sort of share that. So I really appreciate that. So and kind of transitioning to wrapping up because I know like you're super busy and I only wanted to keep you for 30 minutes, but but I'm just curious. So we talked a little bit about sort of like what gives you hope and inspires you. And I'm just also thinking like what role do you think young people you're getting your young people involved. So what role do you see young people and families and everyday community members playing in the shaping the role of future research in our community?
Yeah, I think it's critical that we convene young people, we convene families and older adults, everybody in our community to really hone in on what are their priorities, what do they define as a healthy community, and where are their gaps, right? Like what needs to happen in order to secure that healthy community. And oftentimes what it takes is research to compel those policymakers to pass a law, right? Or to fund something. You need to have the data, you need to have the evidence to substantiate that decision where there's going to be funding allocated for it or a policy made for something. So we need to both get the a sense of the priorities from our young people and our families and our community, and then co-produce the research. We need to work together to actually develop the research studies that will help to demonstrate the impact of whatever strategy it is that we'd like to test, right? Um, so the more we can create spaces that young people feel welcome to come into, that they feel like they can drive the research. If they want to share what will make it work well for them, like send us emails. Say this is what's going to work well for youth. We do community engagement studios through the CTSI, so reaching out to our community engagement team with suggestions about where that the studios could be held, where we should be doing some tabling, or maybe tabling is not the right approach. Maybe there's another approach that folks want to suggest. So we want to meet folks where they are, and we want to ensure that priorities reflect their priorities, not just those of the researchers conducting the work. So the more we can reach out and folks can reach out to us as well, the better. So we can kind of meet in that. We want to bridge, right? We want to meet in the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we do as community health workers. So also, uh, we definitely want folks to meet us at Explore More on the third floor, and check out Sofia with an F. Sofia Learns About Research. We want folks to meet us there, and check that out. We also want folks to go online and check out Sofia Learns About Research on the UB website, right? Just make sure y'all
Yep.
go.
And at Exploring More, you'll also get a paper copy of the book too. They've been giving those out, so you can pick one up at, I think, their front desk. So,
Perfect, perfect. So listen,
and it's
Renee.
in Spanish and Arabic.
Oh, see now we being culturally competent. There we go.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
community health worker, and you see that's what happens when you have a community health worker slash researcher slash anthropologist slash mom on the team, because all those identities converge together to really create something that's super useful and dynamic. So I really thank you for just being who you are, Renee. You are truly an asset to the community. Somebody who, like I said, I learn from, who I respect, who I consider a friend, who I admire. And really, is there any way that like folks who might be listening can connect with you to support the work that you're doing? I know you said send emails. I just also want to say, if you're listening out there, remember we're talking to a researcher, Dr. Renee Cadzow, so she probably will read the email. Like, this ain't one of those folks that's like, send me an email, they don't read it. No, she's gonna read the email. So make sure that y'all reach out to Dr. Renee Cadzow. Any other way that they can support you in the work that you're doing, whether it's with community health workers or with the CTSI work that we're doing, or just anything in general?
No, I'd say that's it. Just I love to talk with folks. You can Google me and you'll find my contact information on the UB webpage. You can friend me on LinkedIn. So I'm happy to connect with people in whatever way they'd love to connect. And also I love to meet people in community. So I try to make it out to events, cultural events, and things like that. So hope to see folks that are listening in spaces like that.
Word. Well, again, I appreciate you, Renee, for making time and rescheduling this, because we were supposed to do this earlier, but the universe saw fit for us to do this at this time. So I appreciate you, because I know that you're a very busy woman, and you have a lot of stuff going on. So I appreciate you taking time to hang out with us on the Igniting Hope Radio podcast. That is Dr. Renee Cadzow. Make sure you send her an email. She will read it. And make sure you go to Explore More on the third floor and check out Sofia Learns About Research and get a paper copy there as well. I am your host, Sherman Webb-Middlebrooks, lifelong Buffalo resident and full-time Black man. And we are out of here. Make sure you take care of yourself and each other. Peace.
All right. Always a pleasure.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye.